I hear the lieutenant governor and some of our folks on the other end of the building wanting to maybe emulate or copy President Trump about this idea of tax rebates with some of our surplus. Maybe we're all for that in the House, but I certainly hope we find that same copycat agenda when it comes to what President Trump wants to do on education freedom as well.
We need to get the money back. This year, that's right, this year we're going to announce a $316 million tax rebate where we pay your money back to you, the citizens.
Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Jeff Pender, joined here today with Michael Goldberg. Michael, hello.
Hello, Jeff.
And Taylor Vance.
Good morning.
And I think we're all trying to cool off still. We've had 2 days at the vaunted Neshoba County Fair, and
I think both days had excessive heat warnings.
Should I mention it was hot? It's always hot.
A little too much fun in the sun, for sure.
This year, it was really hot. Anyway, the temperature was hot. I would say as far as Neshoba County fairs go, this is kind of an off season for statewide elections. It probably wasn't the most exciting or newsworthy one we've seen. There wasn't that I recall any major fireworks or fire and brimstone. However, on Wednesday we did see what might be sort of a Republican gubernatorial primary type matchup. Michael, tell us what were some of the highlights from Wednesday?
Sure. So Wednesday, we saw Agricultural Commissioner Andy Gipson and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Gipson, of course, already declared his candidacy for the governor's mansion in 2027. The lieutenant governor seen as a likely candidate, and he confirmed again yesterday that he was, absolutely
a likely candidate,
absolutely considering a run. Yes, absolutely a likely candidate. Would not go as far as to officially declare his candidacy when asked. But both of those officials unveiled pretty lofty spending policies, potentially setting the stage for the issues that might shape that Republican primary. The agriculture commissioner committing to taking a look at subsidies for crops, the impact of international trade, and the lieutenant governor coming out with a $316 million tax rebate policy, write people checks, give them some of their money back on state taxes. Do either of you want to get into the weeds a little more on that?
Taylor, Delbert, with, the campaign season approaching, Delbert wants to cut folks a check, correct?
He does. I think cutting folks a check is kind of a popular policy,
right.
I tend to have some questions about how exactly we would pay for all of this. I think I recall having a lot of conversations with the lieutenant governor earlier this session where he was kind of worried about our finances a little bit. Yeah. And he was thinking, I believe the words he uses, we have a multi-billion dollar pension problem that we have to figure out with PERS. Infrastructure, of course, is always a worry. And then this was all while they were trying to figure out how to cut taxes. Right. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to imply that he's changed his mind or anything.
They're referring to, we have a pretty sizable $1 billion plus sort of in the bank, so to speak.
Yes. I just find it interesting that the two potential candidates for governor are, at times like to flash off their fiscally conservative bona fides, and now they're wanting to spend a bunch of money while keeping the low tax structure.
They verbally from the podium spent a lot of money, didn't they?
Yes. But to be fair, I guess to the lieutenant governor a little bit, I think his tax rebate plan or program would not necessarily be a recurring thing. It would just be a one-time plan if the state could afford it and had enough, surplus revenue.
This fair, speaking of gubernatorial aspirations, had a notable absentee absentee, correct?
Yes. We did not get to hear from our state auditor, Shad White.
Right.
Is that who you were referring to?
Yes.
Yes. He was not there. I don't know the proper term for it, but he was National Guard duty. And could not be there. And I know the Fair Association has some pretty strict rules on speaking, and they do not allow proxies to speak in a candidate's or elected official's place. So he, I'm sure would have spoken if he would have been available, but no, he was not there because he was on National Guard duty.
We also did not hear from billionaire businessman Tommy Duff, who is, of course, considering a run for governor himself, although we did publish an extensive Q&A with him, which you can find on our website. He also spoke at an event for us with JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon as well last week. So we got to hear a little bit more about what he thinks, but we did not see him at the fair.
Yeah. Again,
and he would not have been allowed to.
I was going to say, again, just to extra information for the Mississippi political insiders listening to this podcast. If you don't know, the fair only allows elected officials or candidates to speak at the fair. You can't do it just because you're considering a run and want to address the fine attendees.
Okay. We also heard from House Speaker Jason White, pretty notable speech. He outlined pretty clearly, which I guess something he's already talked about here recently. But Michael, what did he say his legislative priority is going to be?
The speaker reaffirmed that education freedom, as he calls it, which is another word for school choice, will be his caucus's top priority next session. This is a continuation of some of the comments he made at the Stennis luncheon, I believe last month, which we talked about on this podcast. He believes that that the legislature should take advantage of the incentives made possible by the federal government to incentivize school choice, opting into some tax credits. He also wants to focus on portability, making it easier to transfer between public schools, potentially looking at consolidating or closing some schools. So that really, as we'll get into, that was the probably dominant theme for both the speaker and Governor Tate Reeves, putting school choice at the center of their agenda, setting that up to be one of the most hotly contested issues next session. The lieutenant governor, that featured less prominently in his comments. He has, of course, been in favor of open enrollment, again, public school transfers, although measures to do that last session died in his chamber. So the speaker was quite pointed, and particularly he responded to the lieutenant governor's tax rebate plan and said that it's something that he could see his caucus supporting, but he felt that policy was sort of a reflection of President Donald Trump, who has come out in favor of writing checks, of course, in the past. And the speaker, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, said he hopes that quote, copycat agenda extends to education freedom.
Sure. And Speaker White is, I believe, made clear in the past, he's for lack of a better way to put it, full universal school choice, which essentially would mean vouchers or being able to take money that would go per student for public school,
right?
A family being able to take that money and spend it at a private school or any other institution. But now he appears to also usually make clear he doesn't think his own caucus would go for that, correct?
That's right. He definitely, when talking about school choice or education freedom, draws a distinction between where he stands and where he believes the consensus in his caucus is. And by all indication, he believes his caucus is behind open enrollment. There was an open enrollment bill that passed last session before dying in the Senate, but a more extensive voucher program didn't even make it for a vote on the House floor. So it seems like that will be the approach going forward. Of course, this session, he plans to introduce a comprehensive, big, beautiful bill, including all of the education priorities rather than more of a piecemeal, standalone approach that they adopted last session.
I mean, in fairness to the speaker, he has not hid his priorities.
Right.
I mean,
Sure,
he has made it
sure.
very clear. I mean, ever since, the session adjourned, sine die, that he wants to continue focusing on this issue. He's going to form a select committee at which he is named, and they're going to meet in the fall to study this. Those hearings are going to be public. And like Michael said, there's going to be one big, beautiful education freedom bill. Now, of course, we don't know exactly what that bill will say.
Sure.
But, I mean, he has every time I've heard him speak, he has mentioned that this is what he wants to do.
Well, as you say, to the speaker's credit, I think we've talked about it here before. Yeah, he hasn't hidden his hand. I don't think either of his legislative sessions as speaker. He's made pretty clear what his priorities are. He's pretty much made them available to the public beforehand, and the Senate leadership still appears to be caught off guard
every time.
So every time it seems like, but I will say the speaker has had some. He's done a lot, set a lot of his priorities through a pretty open and public and transparent process. So,
and in fact, we'll see some of those priorities fleshed out a little bit more in the select committees on the House side that we will see before next session on education, freedom, PERS, a few other issues.
Now, the lieutenant governor, leader of the Senate, on the other hand, one thing he mentioned again, I know he's talked about this actually for a couple of years. Actually, he's talked about it dating back to when he was Secretary of State many years ago, but government restructuring. Actually, if I recall correctly, there was a committee formed last year, but I don't think we saw anything really come out of that. But at the fair this week, he mentioned that again and talked like that was going to be a priority of his. He's talked about again for many years and made some efforts again dating back to when he was Secretary of State. But Mississippi has lots, somewhere in the well over 150 range, I think at this point, agencies, boards, and commissions. And I know he's talked a lot in the past about paring them down, consolidating them, doing away with some of them, doing away with some red tape and all. So I don't know. Maybe before the session we'll get more fleshed out details.
Right. I believe the lieutenant governor doesn't refer to it as Moj. That is the auditor's sort of term for an initiative that would aim to shrink the size of government, eliminate state agencies. Obviously, that sentiment has existed a long time in the Republican Party, but certainly with the rising influence of Elon Musk, although things have changed on that front in recent months, the appetite for eliminating agencies both at the state and federal level is certainly there.
Sure. And some of these, I guess most of the talk has not been eliminating what you would consider a full-on state agency or department. It's more
consolidating and making sure that efforts aren't duplicated or
for a state our size. I mean, it's been pointed out, and there have been some empirical looks at this, that we have a pretty good bit of bureaucracy when it comes to agencies and boards that license various industries or oversee them.
I have one idea for consolidating government, but the legislature really doesn't seem to like my idea.
What is that?
My idea is to eliminate some of the number of legislators that we have, because we have too dang many for our size.
That's come up before. Per capita, we have a very large legislature. Over the years, that's been discussed. Representative Hank Zuber has often been a lone voice calling for consolidation, for going to legislature having a full session only every other year, kind of like Texas and some others.
Speaking of Texas, Texas has fewer state senators than we do, and a much higher population. But
I know people have noted, though, Texas only has a full session every other year.
Yeah.
But they have lots of special sessions.
Yeah.
There have been times it seems like Texas meets every year round.
Convincing legislators to eliminate
themselves.
Their
it's
seats,
kind of a hard,
tall order.
It's probably taller in order than term limits, even, or right up there with term limits. Anyway, other than the oppressive heat and humidity, anything else stand out this year from the fair to either of you guys?
Well, we mentioned it a little bit, but we should probably mention the governor's remarks as well. Again, he made education freedom or school choice the center of his agenda, or his comments, of course, referencing the Mississippi Miracle, of course, in K through 12 education on the reading front. He said that the lieutenant governor spoke to him about the tax rebate proposal before the lieutenant governor unveiled it at the fair. And the governor said that he was, without coming fully in support of it, he said it was something that he, welcomed, and that it showed, the strength of Mississippi's budget surplus. And beyond that, I will say Joe Biden came up a lot at the fair. I had to sort of wonder which edition of the Neshoba County Fair that we were watching. But particularly, I would say Attorney General Lynn Fitch, she spoke as well, made sort of her efforts over the past 4 years to fight back against the Biden administration are really a feature of her speech. And she also, when asked, said she was looking at the governor's race in 2027, but was focused on her current role. But I would say Joe Biden was mentioned almost as much as Donald Trump. I could be wrong. I didn't tally, but
I'm surprised Nancy Pelosi didn't come up any.
Yeah,
usually,
in years past, she has been a dominant figure at
even though she's no
County.
longer the leader of the House Democrats. I'm still surprised. That's usually
And speaking of Trump, I think our statewide Republican elected officials to a person made clear there is no daylight between them and
Donald Trump,
the current administration.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, we also had Congressman Michael Guest speak.
Yes. And he delivered a letter from the president to the fair,
Melania
and First Lady Melania Trump to the fair attendees. Just noting that the Neshoba County Fair is a remarkable tradition, and it's
which I know President Trump has not been here before, although there've been rumors of that in years past when he was campaigning or whatever. But I know we have had
Donald Trump Jr.
Donald Trump Jr. has been there. I remember his first trip there. I ended up standing beside him on the porch of a cabin, and like the rest of us, he was pouring sweat, and he looked at me. He was like, "My God, is it always this hot here?" I'm like, "Yeah, usually at the fair, yeah." But speaking of which, we should give a shout out to our colleague who's not here, Katie Lynn. Attended her first Neshoba County Fair, and bless her heart, she's from Northern California, and but she endured the heat. We should give her kudos for that.
I think she enjoyed herself. She was wide-eyed for sure. I remember my first Neshoba County Fair, fresh after moving from Los Angeles, California to Mississippi a few months prior, and it's a lot to take in your first time.
It's nothing quite
she
like
did a great job. That's right.
We'll have to get her take on it when she's back on in a future episode. But anyway, a little bit of gubernatorial politics. No fire and brimstone. Andy Gibson, of course, always gives a rousing speech, and we should note he literally threw his hat in the ring.
He did, took his cowboy hat off of his head and said, "I am throwing my hat into the ring for governor," and launched it from the stage, and I believe one of his sons caught it.
Sure. And I know he was notably out there shaking babies and kissing hands,
signing CDs
for a couple of days there. Yeah, had copies of his CD we've mentioned on this show before. So he is the first person to officially announce, and he has hit the ground running on his campaign. So
yeah, and yeah, as you mentioned, no fire and brimstone. The lieutenant governor said at one point, when he was asked about considering a run for the governor's mansion, about other candidates, no one in particular, but he said, he wished that current candidates or prospective candidates would be focused on their jobs that they're doing. So we are slowly, very easily making our way into.
Didn't mention anyone by name.
Didn't mention anyone in particular.
Then, Speaker White threw a few potential barbs at the Senate and probably Hoseman, but again, not mentioned by name.
That's kind of par for his course. He's no shade toward the speaker, but he certainly doesn't miss an opportunity.
One of my colleagues in the press corps asked the speaker if the cooling off period had ended, because of course there was ostensibly a cooling off period between the House and Senate. And the speaker said that he felt that relations between the chambers were stable, but of course he doesn't shy away from making his position known when it diverges from the upper chamber. So
sure, I'm guessing next year, as we get more into the actual 2027 campaign season, their names will be named as shots are taken next year. But
it says usually as we get closer to a primary, Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment of what is it? You shall not speak ill of a fellow Republican. That commandment sort of tends to fade into the background.
It does. Speaking of Republican primaries, as this airs on Monday, Tuesday is a kind of unprecedented, or only one other time, but a pretty large number of what you could call do-over legislative elections. Yeah. Tuesday, we've got how many contested races?
So there are 14 total special elections, but only 10 of those are contested. There four of those didn't draw an opponent, so there are 10 contested. And so normally in a special election, there's not a party primary; it's just one general election. But that's not the case.
These are do-over elections.
These are do-over elections, and so there are the party primary is Tuesday. A potential runoff can take place 3 weeks later,
right,
and then the general election after that.
Well, so for pretty large part of the state, several parts of the state, be sure and pay attention. You will on Tuesday, August 5th, have legislative primaries to vote in. Please go vote. And to find out a little bit more about who's running and some of their policy positions, we have a really good voter guide. Go to MississippiToday.org to see that and get out and vote. Guys, I still don't know that I've totally cooled down.
Oh, I haven't. I'm still hydrating.
Drink more ice water and sweet tea today, and
we just need to find a pool to swim in.
That would be.
I personally am energized still by the fact that I got the sense that every politician, statewide official we spoke to yesterday was very happy to see us, and that was heartening. So that's helping me power through.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks guys for giving us the rundown, and we will see you soon.
All right. See ya.
See ya.